Welcome to our wonderful Wednesday in the Word. I am Reverend Tucker here at United Institutional Baptist Church, where our pastor is the Honorable Reverend Dr. John A.R. Freeman. This evening, we will be sharing in the topic of test to testimony. We'll be looking at Job, the 6th chapter through the 12th chapter. If you will go with me in prayer. God, we thank you this evening for allowing us just to be able to sign on. God, we thank you for safety throughout the day. Thank you for what you've kept us from, God, the dangers that were unseen, that we had no idea, God, that were coming our way. This evening we say thank you. God, thank you for the opportunity to just delve in and to read about Job, to understand about Job, God, to look at where Job was and how he goes from a test to be able to give a testimony. God, we honor you this evening. We worship you this evening. God, I ask that you would just decrease me and that you would increase you. And God, that the words of my mouth would be acceptable to you. God, these are the holy blessings we ask in your matchless name. Amen. So again, our subject topic this evening is from test to testimony. It's truly amazing to see the wonder of God's creation. Who doesn't appreciate the all that all of God has made? I myself personally enjoy a sunrise, a sunset, and will stop almost anywhere to look at a rainbow. Let's think about the redwood trees of California. They are amongst the oldest and largest trees in the world. Their size and height can grow to upwards of 200 to 240 feet tall and 30 feet wide. Some exceptional trees grow to 350 feet tall. How amazing! Notice in the picture of a redwood the sheer size and shape of the cross-section of the tree's core. Each layer tells a story and gives us some clues of the age of this particular tree. The point is that age reveals how many years it took to grow to this point that we see today. What we don't know is everything the tree had to endure to get to the point that we see. Think of all the scorching summers and the harsh winters, years of drought and storms. We just see the trees now. We don't know the full story of the tree's growth. We only see the finished product. As we pick up with the 6th chapter of Job, our main character is Job. Job started out at the beginning of the book that bears his name, enjoying what we like to refer to as a supernatural favor and blessing. Job had everything. But we learn about a conversation in heaven about Job. God initiated the discussion by bragging on Job to Satan. And Satan does what Satan does, which is to make accusations. Now, it's one thing to make an accusation for the purpose of calling the attention to what you need to work on and change. However, Satan makes accusations for the purpose of discouraging you and keeping you defeated by your past. I don't know about you, but I've had some Satans in my life. I've had some people who were there just to discourage me, not to correct and change, but I've also had those people in my life that were there to help correct, to change, to nurture. This is why you need to learn about your identity in Christ, meaning you need to know who God says you are. When you know who you are in Christ, you can fight against the enemy's attacks that try to discourage and defeat you. So as Reverend Caldwell shared with you last week, God gave Satan permission to attack Job. But please remember, whatever happens to you, God has purposed or God permitted. So what's the difference? I'm glad you asked. God permitted is a natural reality of life that happens to everyone, such as natural disasters and aging. God purposed is what God sends for a particular season. God said to Satan, Job is an upright man who fears God and rejects a life of evil. The purpose for Job's suffering is to prove God's integrity and to validate Job's faith to stand the time of a test. So God allowed Job to go through the test because God knew what Job could handle. God wanted to prove to Job and Satan that if God takes you to it, that he can bring you through it. 1 Corinthians 10 and 13. The story of Job teaches that God knows us better than we know ourselves. Job's story also helps us to see how much God believes in us and is willing to allow us to be tested to prove that you are stronger with his help than you think. So we can see Satan unleashed on Job. And we see God allowing the layers of Job's life to be pulled back like an onion. And we see Job being exposed to the times of a test. Let's see what the lesson can help you learn from Job chapter 6 through 12. So Job responds to one of his friends. When they start off, it's three friends that are checking on, that are arriving to check on. How you doing? What's going on? So here we have these friends that are checking on him, and they find Job's appearance after the death and destruction of his entire family. Job's children are dead, his family compound destroyed, and his herds and crops all gone. Job has sore boils from head to toe. His body is covered with this salve to treat the sores. After a day or so of complete silence, in chapter 3, Job breaks out in his pain, cursing everything from his mother's womb and how unfair the bad things that have happened to him were. It's not sinful, nor is it a sign of spiritual immaturity to lose it when bad things happen to you. Pastor made a statement in a sermon once that of how bad it can be being tested can make you have a breakthrough or a breaking point, and how some people have lost their faith in God when they've been tested. One person wrote in the Facebook post that said that she never gives up on God, and that's great. But Pastor's point was you shouldn't think that something is wrong with you if you have negative thoughts and moments when you question God in a moment. It's all right to not be okay and even feel some kind of way and struggle with what you're going through, because we all are human. But keep in mind, even though your moments may be really trying and difficult, you don't have to let your moments define or defeat you. Another point is God is so gracious that God gives us room to cry out and even complain when we're going through something. Look at Job 3, 1 through 4. He gives us that opportunity just to express how we feel. In Job 7, Job reminds us in the first few verses of his struggles. It's very close to how we can compare our lives for today's time. Job compared his struggles to that of a working hand looking for shade. I think about some of those of us who work or maybe stay-at-home parents or people that are just in the working field. How you feel waiting for a break. How you feel looking for that moment where you get your 15 minutes, or for me, where I get my planning period, or for me, where I have the opportunity just to be able to run to the bathroom and take a break. We all long for a break. Your quiet moments at work may be different. However, We all long for the opportunity just to have those moments. Sometimes working in the shade can be at least 20 degrees different than working in the sun. In verses 3 through 4, he reminds us of the nights of misery and insomnia takes over, in visions of his thoughts of insomnia. He says that as the night drags on, he wonders how long before he gets up because he tosses and turns until dawn. Have you ever tossed and turned all night long? You see 2 o'clock, you see 3 o'clock, you see 4 o'clock, and then maybe you even see 5 o'clock. But it's always the opportunity where you just might doze off just a few moments before that alarm wakes you up. Ding, 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 ding. Can you relate? He's basically telling us of his situation. So imagine not sleeping and topping it off with bugs being all over you. So this brings us to Job crying out to God in the last verses. Job cries out in anguish and in pain. He basically has a conversation with God, and an honest conversation with God. He expresses his feelings to him about what's going on with his situation. He says in verse 11, I cannot keep from speaking, my bitter soul must complain. This could be a lesson for us on how to handle a situation. Instead, we often fly off the handle. We tend to think about what we do or what we didn't do or what we didn't say after the fact. We tend to worry about who we hurt later. That's when most of us have a conscience that begin to think about, oh my goodness, now how do I fix this? Or do we let it fester and grow into an even bigger problem? Or do we go to the grave without saying I'm sorry, without apologizing, without fixing the relationship? Or better yet, that's when we find those deathbed confessions. Can you remember when you were a child and you were pushing your limits with your parents, or you were pushing your limits with an adult? You could look in their eyes and you could tell by their voice, or better yet, you could just feel them looking at you. And so some young folks might say that when they're in trouble, their parents call them by their whole government name. Job was pressing some of those same limits. He asked God, am I a sea monster or a dragon that you must put me under guard? He was really crossing the line, challenging God on his love for him. We know that Satan, he comes to kill, he comes to steal, and he comes to destroy, and he himself can truly do all of those things. Satan will always try to get us to forsake God. If he tempted Jesus, what makes us any different? We're looking from outside looking in. Job has no idea of what's happening or why. But thank God we have a peek at situations, and God has given us this book of Job to guide us through our test. I think a great point to remember here is that no matter what our test, God still loves us. So when we look at chapter 9, we look at the fact that Job spends the 9th chapter really trying to figure out what he has done wrong. I think sometimes in life we all kind of wonder when things are coming at us left and right, what is it that we're doing? How can I do something different? So like Job, he's trying to figure out, what have I done wrong? Why do I have these sores? Why do I have these boils? What happened to my family? Everything is gone. Job knows that he has lived a blameless life and really can't figure out why it feels like all of this is happening to him. Have you ever had a friend or friend that you just couldn't figure out why you all were not speaking, or kind of why you may have fallen out? When you went to bed, you all may have been friends. And then something happened when you wake up. You're not friends anymore. This person has erased you from social media. This person has erased your phone number. And here you are trying to figure out what's going on. Why aren't we talking? Is there a reason? That's what Job was asking. Maybe you had a run-in with the law, a speeding ticket or something else. You, like Job, are waiting to have your case heard by the judge. Job's judge was God. He goes on to express that God is the creator of the stars, that God can pass him and that he could not see him, and that he stretches out the heavens and trends on the waves. Job wants to know, how do you argue or dispute with a person like that? Have you ever gotten your performance report from your boss? You know, you have some bosses that will listen to you on your performance report, and once you kind of go through it and they give you the opportunity to go through it, do you have anything you want to discuss? Do you see anything that you feel like needs to be changed? And then you have some bosses that have just that dictatorship, that here's your summary, here's what you've done, and either you're going to get your raise or either you're not going to get your raise. You know, they kind of rule with an iron thumb, and they could care less, really, about your opinion. Job felt that, like many of us during these meetings, that I haven't done anything wrong, but your boss still finds fault, guilt of nothing, really, and exactly what it is that you ask of him. When you ask a question, you really just don't get an answer. And so you are just dumbfounded about what's going on with the situation. I like the way that the Study Bible puts it. In verse 20 and 21, it explains, even if I'm innocent, my mouth would condemn me. Job was saying, in spite of my good life, God is determined to condemn me. To condemn means to close down, to shut down. When they condemn a house, nobody can go in there until everything is fixed up or back to code. As his suffering continued, he became more impatient. Although Job remained loyal to God, he made statements he would later regret. In terms of extended sickness and prolonged pain, it's natural for people to doubt, to be in despair, or to even become impatient. During these times, people need someone that'll just listen to them, someone that will help them through the feelings and frustrations of patience and help them to get patience with their impatience. So everybody needs somebody that they can pick up the phone, that they can talk to, that will lend a listening ear to them when they're going through a particular situation. As we look at chapter 10, let me ask you this. Have you ever been in a situation that you thought you couldn't get out of? Maybe an abusive situation, maybe an addictive situation, maybe a relationship. You know, you get so down on yourself and you start to wallow in your own self-pity. I can remember when my daughter was in the NICU and I couldn't take her home. I can remember there was a mother of the church who reminded me not to wallow in my own self-pity, that God was still in control. She reminded me that I really only had 3 days to cry. I had one for the Father, one for the Son, one for the Holy Ghost, and then it was time to get up. And so you may not think about it that way when you have a situation, but for me, she said enough to me to jab me to get up and to be motivated to do what it was I needed to do. So when you start to feel bad for yourself and possibly to think, I just can't do any better, or at times settle for your current reality and you change your trajectory of your future. In this time, we often blame God for our situation. Job had begun to do the very same thing. He says, I am disgusted with my life. Let me complain freely. My bitter soul must complain. I will say to God, don't simply condemn me. Tell me the charge you are bringing against me. You know, when a police officer stops you, you may already know why they stopped you. You may. But we always give the answer of, or the question of, why did you stop me? Oh, you were speeding. I was speeding? Do you know how fast you were going? So we all want to know what it is that we are being charged with. Excuse me. What do you gain by oppressing me, is what Job asked God. Why do you reject me? The work of your own hands while smiling on the schemes of the wicked. Are your eyes like those of human? Do you see things only as people see them? That's Job 10, 1 through 4. Job just needed to say these things to God. He really just needed to vent. He wanted to know, what is the charge? One of the things we have to remember is that life's trials, whether sent by God or allowed by God, can be the means of our development or our refinement. When we are being developed, we are being shaped and we are being formed. But when we are being refined, God is removing all of the impurities or things that we've gotten ourselves into that God needs to remove in order for us to be back on his track and in order for us to grow. A neighborhood can't grow unless they cut down the trees. They bring in large machines and they clean everything out. God does the very same for our life. He has to develop us. He has to refine us so that we can grow in him. So I would suggest maybe that you think about things this way. What can I learn and how can I grow, rather than who did this and why? So for me, when I'm in a situation, I try to think, God, why am I here? What is it that I'm supposed to learn? And what is it that I'm supposed to do? And is there anybody that you want me to minister to? I begun to ask myself, when will this be over? You may even refer to yourself as Job at times. At some point, you have to learn God's lesson and the lesson that God wanted to teach you. Think about taking a class in school. Normally, if you fail a class, especially one of those big classes, English, math, social studies, science, you fail one of those, you're doomed, and you must take it over. So when you think about learn the lessons that God has for you, in order to learn the lesson, if you fail, you've got to go back and you've got to take that thing again. So what do you think about assumptions? We often assume different things. We can assume that when we wake up in the morning that we would be 25 pounds lighter, especially after this COVID. I'm still waiting on that one. We can assume that playing the numbers will lead us to be billionaires. We can assume that we will get paid with doing no work. Well, for most of us, that just doesn't happen. In verses 13 through 14, I like the NIV version of this, and I'm sorry if I'm confusing you, but I go back and forth on which one is kind of the clearest or which one stands out or jumps out to me. But this is what it says. But this is what you concealed in your heart. And I know that this was on your mind. He goes as far as to say in verse 14, if I have sinned, you would be watching me and would not let my offense go unpunished. So you may ask, what was Job doing? He had gotten frustrated and jumped to an assumption that God was out to get him. Because he said, if I've sinned, you would be watching, you've seen it. You would be able to punish me because you see everything. Have you ever felt that God didn't love you? What normally happens when we jump to a conclusion? We normally jump to the wrong conclusion is normally what happens because we're in our emotions. Because it is all in our minds when we form our very own conclusion about a situation that is not accurate. It's like cooking the Thanksgiving turkey too long, and we all know how that turns out because nobody wants to eat a dry turkey. So don't jump to your own conclusions. Think about that as a parallel to that dry turkey. I would encourage you to do that. I would encourage you to whatever that you're going through, that you would know that you can't see what God can see. He knows what's in your tomorrow. He knows how it happens. He knows why it happens. And no matter how bad, it was designed to make you stronger. I would say in your frustration, know that there is a greater good. You may not see it because you're human, but don't give up and don't quit. In the last portion of chapter 10, Job is preparing for his death. You know, you go to the doctor, you get a bad report, and you're like, oh man, the doctor said that I only have this, or the doctor said that this could lead to, you know how sometimes in our mind we go all the way from 1 all the way over to 1,000,000. You know, when your parents start talking to you, or your grandparents or a family member, they start talking to you about death. They start telling you where all the important documents are. They start giving you the information about the life insurance. They start giving you the information about their checking accounts, their saving accounts. They start telling you what songs they want to have sang at their service. Or better yet, they start telling you, I don't want to have a service. Follow me and listen to Job lay out his plan. See, he says, I've only a few days left, so leave me alone, that I may have a moment of comfort before I leave to never return for the land of darkness and utter gloom. See, it's a land in dark midnight and a land of gloom and confusion, wherever the light is dark as midnight. Job expressed his view of death based on the Old Testament, where the dead went to a place that was joyless and dark. There was no judgment and there was no escape from it. In chapter 11, we learn that Job's friend, we all know that one friend that we hate to tell them something that's going on in your life. You know that friend that no matter what you tell them, everything that happens to you is your fault. Somebody rams you in the back of your vehicle, it's your fault. You have a flat tire, it's your fault. You're late to work because of the flat tire, it's your fault. No matter what, we have that friend that says it's your fault. Well, Zophar was one of those friends for Job. He basically felt it was his responsibility to serve Job the business. He was sick and tired of hearing Job complain about what was going on to him. He says, Job, shouldn't someone answer for the torrent of words? Is a person proved innocent just by a lot of talking? Should I remain silent while you babble on? When you mock God, shouldn't someone make you ashamed? You claim my beliefs are pure and I am clean in the sight of God. If only God would speak, if only he would tell you what he thinks. If only he would tell you the secrets of wisdom, for true wisdom is not a simple matter. Listen, God is doubtless punishing you far less than what you deserve. So basically, I'd like to take a minute to just translate that in just layman terms. He's basically saying, listen, homeboy, you're over here complaining and saying that you're innocent and that you've done nothing. For God to be punishing you like this, I can't take it anymore. You're going on and on and on and on. You act like you are perfect. Oh, if only you knew what God wanted to say to you. Stop tripping, Job, stop tripping. You must have done something, and God is going light on you. You should have got more. Can you imagine somebody saying that, you got 5 days without pay, and then Zophar comes along and he's like, oh, no. You only got 5 days without pay for what you did, but you deserve 25 days for what you did. So just chill out, Job. Zophar had no compassion when speaking to his friend. He really seemed to be a kind of know-it-all, telling Job off as if he could hear what God was speaking. We do this from time to time. We tell people, if only grandma could see you now. If only so-and-so could hear what you've done. If they could see what you've done. You know, we tell them that grandma would be turning over in her grave if she knew you had done something like that. We too can be very harsh on our friends. Let them get out of order and do something we think was wrong. We too will read them their rights, not answer their texts, block them, and even go as far as delete them from your contacts. We too can be cold individuals as humans. Would you agree? Let's look quickly at verse 11. Surely he recognizes deceivers, and when he sees evil, does he not take note? Zophar is relentless. He is determined to make Job feel like nothing. The bottom of his foot, he is determined. He told him, surely God knows deceivers. Surely he does. When I think of a deceiver, I think of one who is hiding something, someone who is not telling the whole truth. I think of someone who possibly could just be basically a liar. And we all know that good old saying, I don't know where it came from, where it originated. You know the one that if you'll lie, you'll steal. If you'll steal, you'll kill. I can certainly understand what they're saying. Basically, to me, and my understanding is that one sin will lead you to another sin will lead you to another sin will lead you to another, and it will just be a repetitive pattern, almost like a circle. One thing about God is that you can't hide from him. You can't hide. You can hide from your friends, from your family, from your co-workers, and even from yourself at times. You can become evasive. You cannot answer the phone when they call. You can see their text messages come up and look at them and then leave them on read. You can hide. You can even hide from yourself by not being truthful. But really, the fact of the matter is that every time you look at yourself in the mirror, you have to confront yourself. But God knows exactly where we are, and he knows how to find you. To him, you are never lost. When we look at chapter 12, Job finally gives his reply to his three friends who have been scolding him. For me as a carnal individual, I try to wrap my head around the type of friends that would sit with Job for 7 days and 7 nights and say nothing, and then turn and talk to him like he is nothing. Then I remembered, that's just ordinary people. We normally don't see the bad side of our friends until something goes wrong. That's when you're left to feel like Job. While he replied one way today we may reply another. Either way, our results were the same. Sometimes you just have to get your friends told. Just make sure it gets you in good trouble. Job says in verse 3, I have a mind as well as you. I'm not less than you. Who doesn't know that? He expresses to them that he has been the laughing stock amongst his friends. I can remember when I was in elementary school and I was the laughing stock. My grandmother would come down every summer and spend the summer with me because she was a school teacher, and then later my sister. And I can recall that we had forgotten to get school shoes. Back then you had Sunday shoes, you had outside shoes to play in, and then you had your school shoes. So my grandmother had forgotten to get me school shoes. So we were down at what used to be Winn-Dixie is down on 29 where the Roses and something else is now. So she had forgotten to get me shoes. And so we walked into this Winn-Dixie. There was a bin. I can see it just as vivid over to the right. And she says, hey, Pooh, look at those shoes. I like those. Get you a pair. So because my grandmother loved them, I loved them. I got a pair. Those were my new school shoes. Thought I was the coolest thing ever. Well, I thought I was cool, didn't know I was going to be the laughing stock like Job, and I walked in, got to the lunchroom, the breakfast area, and people started laughing. And I was like, what are they laughing at? I know that they're not laughing at me. Well, surely they were laughing at me. And they sang this song to me. They said, Joe Laps, they cost $1.99, Joe Laps. They make your feet feel fine, Joe Laps. And I said, wait. Y'all laughing at me? He said, listen, you don't have to listen to me. Just look at the birds, the animals, and the earth. They all are in his hands. So no matter who's laughing, really, God is still in control. It's also important to note in the beginning, he tells them that they are the ones who think that they have the wisdom. But in verse 13, Job reminds them that God has the wisdom and the power, counsel and understanding. God has the power to tear down what cannot be rebuilt. Those he imprisons cannot be released. He can hold back the water. He can cause flooding. He can strip rulers of their power. He makes nations great and destroys them again. God is a sovereign God, and God is a sovereign God and can do whatever he wants to do, when and how he wants to do it. See, in life, there are going to be many times that people try to tear you down with their words, but it's up to you to remember that God is the only one who knows your story. He's the only one who knows if he sent the situation or if he allowed it. As you go through life, remember to always be on the Lord's side. That's to be on the Lord's side, that when you are going through, to remain faithful like Job. To not allow your friends, people who are disguised as friends, to lead you down the road of destruction, would lead you away from God. Be like the redwood tree and continue to grow through your seasons. We too must learn to endure. We too must learn to suffer. I can imagine the younger the tree, the more it was shaded or shielded by the other trees. So when you think about those seedlings on the ground, they have covering. But as they grow and mature, then they are supposed to start providing that covering for others. We once were young and now we're old. We must learn to suffer. We must also learn to persevere, to continue on the course of action, even in the face of difficulty. Job never gave up. He never quit. Stay the course. Hold on. God is on your side. So when you think about having a test, or you think about having a testimony, a lot of people hear the cliche that you can't have a testimony without a test. That no matter what you go through, you have to learn to be rooted and you have to learn to be grounded. So like those redwoods, in order to grow 240 feet and to be an exceptional tree, 350 feet, you have to stay the course. Those trees stayed. Job stayed. And so even all that Job was going through, he was being mocked. He was being laughed at. He had lost everything. Job stood the test of time, and God knew that he would not curse him, that he would not go against him no matter what Satan allowed. So we too have to be that very same person. We have to accept what God allows, and then we have to learn how to handle, we have to learn how to endure, we have to learn how to persevere. We have to stand the test so that we too will have a testimony. So on behalf of our pastor, Honorable Reverend Dr. Johnny R. Freeman, and our wonderful members, we thank you this evening for joining in on our wonderful Wednesday in the Word. Remember, we are here each Sunday and each Wednesday. We're here Sunday at 11. We're here Wednesday at 7. Tell a friend, share it, and tag a friend on social media if you will go with us in prayer. God, this evening we just thank you for allowing us to have our test. God, we thank you for the things that you send. God, we thank you for the things that you allow, because God, we know that that makes us a better person. God, thank you for allowing us just to be able to see our way through chapter 6 through 12. God, just to learn how that when we're being mocked, how to endure, when we're being laughed at, when we're being scolded, when we're hurting, God, when we're embarrassed, God, just to hold on, to not quit, to not give up, to stay the course. God, thank you for showing us how we can move forward, how we can be better disciples of you. God, thank you for teaching us, giving us Job as an example just to see his test, and God, to be able to listen to his testimony. God, we know that you have all the wisdom, you have all the power, and God, that everything is in your hands because you are a sovereign God. God, we just ask that you would just bless our country, that you would bless our nation, that you would bless, God, Greensboro, North Carolina. God, that you would just keep us, God, that you would keep us united. God, these are the blessings we ask in your holy and matchless name. Amen. Thank you for joining us this evening.